My name is Maren Ellison, 34 years old. Christmas morning should smell like coffee and nutmeg and the faint plastic of storage bins dragged from attics. Mine smelled like paperwork and perfume. Veronica Vale, winged eyeliner, winter white coat, camera app already open, set her phone on my mantle like it owned the room. For the record, she said, angling the lens so it caught me and the tree behind me, I'm keeping this civil. I poured coffee into 2 mugs and set one where Ethan usually sat. He wasn't here yet. I'd asked him to come later, after. Civil is always a choice, I said. She slid a thick envelope across the coffee table, the kind printed on heavier stock to make intimidation feel expensive. Merry Christmas. Inside, an attorney's letterhead and a demand that tried to pass itself off as law. Palimony, emotional damages, reimbursement for domestic labor and lost opportunities. 60% of everything I owned. The house I'd renovated with my dad on weekends, the vintage bike Grandpa and I rebuilt, my retirement accounts I'd grown while pulling night shifts as a paramedic. Her lawyer had stapled on photos, screenshots, and manufactured text chains to paint me as the absent villain who benefited from quasi-marital contributions. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so nakedly cruel. Veronica and I had never lived together. She wasn't my ex-anything. She was Ethan's ex-girlfriend. Veronica watched my face for cracks. The state recognizes equitable claims in long-term relationships, she said sweetly, and I have documentation. I nodded at the mantel where her phone watched us blink. Documentation's useful when it's real. She smiled like a cat testing a locked cage. Your turn, she said, flicking her nails toward the small, wrapped box under the tree. What did you get me, Maren? A peace offering? Something like that. She peeled the paper away with showy slowness, playing to the lens. Inside lay a USB drive and a handwritten note. I've already given copies to the FBI. Your lawyer should get a subpoena tomorrow. Merry Christmas. M. For a heartbeat, the room stopped breathing. Her eyes darted from the note to my face, then to the USB as if it might detonate. Where did you get this? She whispered. From you, I said. From your bank statements. 6 months' worth. Her phone buzzed. Then again. She didn't touch it. I took a sip of coffee that had gone cold during her performance. Trevor isn't just a trainer, I said evenly. He's been running a subscription scam out of that gym, skimming card numbers from members, including your friends, and running them through shell services that don't exist. The credit card fraud paths to accounts you control, Veronica. $470,000 in change. She laughed, too high, too thin. You think this is clever? You think you can frame me with some doctored PDFs? I think your signature on 34 documents isn't a PDF problem, I said. And I think your Zelle memos naming consulting aren't going to sound great when the forensic accountant explains them to a jury. Her phone lit the mantel with a staccato of notifications. Names flashed. Then Trevor. Then Mom. Then unknown. Why are you doing this? She asked, composure cracking, mascara trembling at the lower lid. You're not even part of this. Because you tried to make me part of it, I said. This, I tilted the legal packet, is an attempt to launder theft through me, through Ethan, through whatever story your lawyer thinks a judge will buy. I let the silence spread, deliberate as a net. Also, I added, you shouldn't have filmed me without consent. But since you love documentation, keep rolling. The front door opened on cue. Ethan stepped in from the cold, breath fogging, jaw tight when he saw Veronica's camera light. Veronica, he said, voice a degree cooler than the air. Turn that off. She didn't. Perfect, she said instead, angling the phone to include him. Since you're here, you can tell Maren how much she owes me for the last 4 years. Ethan didn't look at her. He looked at me. You okay? I'm fine, I said. Coffee? He took the mug, settled beside me, a quiet anchor. Veronica's gaze flickered between us, measuring, recalculating. I slid a second envelope across the table, the duplicate I'd prepared in case she tried to pocket the first. If you're looking for the original, there are dozens. I sent 12 copies last night, to your parents, your lawyer, my lawyer, and 3 agencies. You're holding a duplicate for your montage. Her hand trembled. You can't do this, she said, voice dropping into its true register. We have history. You and Ethan had history, I said. Now you and Trevor have a conspiracy. Her phone buzzed with the different tone, one I recognized. Email. If she'd set up alerts like any careful thief, the subject line would already be there. Subpoena. You're bluffing, she said weakly. Agent Diana Foster doesn't bluff, I said. She schedules. Veronica's jaw tightened. Trevor already tried to flip, I said softly. Yesterday. You should answer your mother. The doorbell rang. Ethan glanced at me. I nodded. He opened the door to Mr. and Mrs. Vale, faces bright with holiday politeness, casserole balanced between them like a fragile treaty. Thanks for coming, I said, standing. Veronica has something she needs to tell you. Her mother's smile faltered. Sweetheart? Veronica's mask fractured. For a moment, the room was all sound. Buzzing phone, radiator hiss, soft clink of ceramic as Mrs. Vale set the dish down with shaking fingers. My phone vibrated. From Livia, attorney. FBI raid at Trevor's. Hidden panel with second ledger. Elderly victims. Call ASAP. I felt the floor steady under me in a way that had nothing to do with wood or nails. There's more, I said, turning the screen so Veronica could see the preview line without giving away content. The second set of books, the ones you thought were safe. Ethan's hand found the small of my back, a weight I could lean against if I needed to. I looked at Veronica's parents, at the good, tired fear in their eyes. I'm sorry, I told them, and meant it. But this is going to move fast now. Agents are on their way. Veronica lunged for the USB. Ethan stepped between us without touching her, voice steady. Don't. She froze, not because of Ethan, not because of me, but because somewhere in her pocket, the future finally rang. I set my coffee down, reached for my coat. If you'll excuse me, I need to make a call from the driveway. Out in the cold, I dialed. Livia answered on the first ring. They found a false panel, she said, breathless. Digital forensics is pulling files. Marin, it directly ties Veronica to identity theft of hospice patients. My stomach turned. How long? 2 years, maybe more. I closed my eyes, felt the winter air bite my lungs. There's another thing, Livia added. Emails between Trevor and Veronica about you. After she got a settlement or forced a payout, they plan to file a wrongful death suit. They've been tracking your paramedic shifts to stage a negligence incident. The world narrowed to a thin, bright line. They put dates on it. Target windows, hospital coverage, insurance policy numbers. Marin, this wasn't a drunk text. This was a plan. Headlights swung across the snow. 3 black SUVs rolled to the curb, dark coats stepping out, FBI stitched in block letters. Agent Diana Foster climbed my front steps with measured calm. Ms. Ellison, she said, flashing her credential. We have a warrant to search your residence. Please have everyone step outside. Behind me, Veronica's mother dropped the casserole. Ceramic shattered like a sentence, breaking in the middle. Inside, Veronica's phone still buzzed and buzzed and buzzed, as if 1,000 small alarms had all finally agreed on the truth. I opened the door wide. Come in, Agent Foster, I said. We've been expecting you. Agent Foster moved like someone who'd done this 100 times and knew exactly how long it would take to unspool a life. 2 agents peeled off toward the back, 2 more to the office and bedrooms. No one touches the devices, Foster said, voice even. Phones on the table, screens down. Veronica's mouth worked in protest, but her hands betrayed her, clutching her phone like a talisman. I want my lawyer. You'll have one, Foster replied, right after we secure the scene. Mr. Vale stood rigid as a coat rack, his face gray. Mrs. Vale kept whispering, "This isn't happening," as if repetition was a spell. Ethan angled himself between me and the living room, a quiet baffle against the noise. I could feel the tremor in my own arms finally settle, not calm exactly, but clarity. Ms. Vale, Foster said, turning toward the mantel, is that device actively recording? Veronica's eyes flicked to the camera perched like a smug little gargoyle. Her lips parted, then closed. For my protection, she said softly. For the truth. Foster nodded. Great. We'll take a copy of that truth. She gestured, and an agent gloved up, pulled the SD card, and labeled it in block capitals. I set my own phone on the table alongside Ethan's. Screen dark. Just to be transparent, I said. I've been recording since she arrived, audio only. The little oval recorder lay next to the coaster, red light steady as a heartbeat. Veronica stared at it like a snake watching a flute it couldn't charm. You don't have the right. In Illinois, I do, I said. And even if I didn't, you announced your video for the lawyer the second you walked in. Agent Foster arched a brow at me with the faintest ghost of approval. Let's keep voices low, she said. Then to an agent. Bag both. One of the techs called from the hallway. We've got external drives in the office, 2 laptops, 1 tablet, router is on. Cut the network, mirror everything, Foster answered. Chain of custody video rolling. Good. Veronica swallowed, then pivoted to performance. This is harassment, she told her parents. They're humiliating me. Ethan is humiliating me. She flung a hand toward him. He's the reason I'm even here. He poisoned Marin against me. Ethan didn't bite. You poisoned yourself, he said evenly. Long before I left. Mrs. Vale half turned to her daughter, half to the nearest agent. There must be a misunderstanding. She would never steal. She runs charity drives. She organizes holiday toy donations. Paid for by whose cards? I asked before I could stop myself. Did you check the statements? Her mouth closed like a door pushed shut too hard. Agent Foster lifted a palm without looking at me. Not helpful. She was right. I stepped back beside Ethan, and he brushed my knuckles with 2 fingers. A small Morse code that said, "Stay with me." The tech team moved with a choreography I recognized from my own work. Efficient, practiced, a ballet of crisis. Bag, tag, label. Read serials aloud. Narrate the evidence path as if a future courtroom were already listening. Above the hum of it, Foster's phone buzzed. She glanced, then looked up at Veronica. Ms. Vale, she said, we've just received confirmation of a second ledger recovered from Mr. Randall's residence. The entries include payments to accounts in your name and pseudonyms linked to your social profiles, plus lists of victim categories: elderly, hospice, widowed, card on file. There are also emails discussing an anticipated payout from a legal action against the city following an incident that would require Ms. Ellison's involvement as a paramedic. Do you understand what I'm saying? Veronica's eyes went flat. Trevor set those up. Yet you signed, Foster replied. More than 30 documents. Veronica glanced in the mantle camera. Gone now. Just a square of dust where it had sat. For a second, her mask peeled back. Panic. Anger. Then something ugliest of all. Calculation. She squared her shoulders. Then I want a deal, she said, aiming her voice at the ceiling like the microphones might be up there. I can give you names. I can give you everyone he trained. The trainers, the front desk staff, which managers look the other way. People you don't even know to look at. I'm not the head. I'm not the monster. I'm the entrepreneur, Ethan said, tired. You forged the signatures, Veronica. I improved a broken system, she snapped, heat rushing back. Those banks, those companies, steal every day. We took back. We redistributed. To your own accounts, I said. Charity begins at home, right? Mr. Vale's voice cracked through the room like a dropped plate. Enough. He stared at his daughter as if cataloging a stranger's face. Answer me one thing. Did you use your mother's card for the Alaska trip? Veronica blinked. For a sliver of a second, I thought she might find remorse. She found contempt instead. It was sitting there, she said. They weren't using it. Mrs. Vale made a sound I'll hear when I'm very old, the kind of sound you make when the truth and your heart tear at the same seam. She folded into her husband, who stood straighter because she couldn't. Agent Foster didn't soften. Ms. Vale, place your phone on the table. Veronica clutched it tighter. If I do I get to keep my purse? No, Foster said. Phone, now. Veronica set it down with exaggerated care, then lunged for the USB on the table, the one I'd already duplicated a dozen times. Ethan moved before I could. He stepped into her path, not touching, but near enough that momentum had to choose dignity or bruises. Veronica froze, chest heaving. Don't, Ethan said again, voice level. It's over. A long, raw beat. Then she laughed, sharp and small. It's never over, she said. Not for me. Not for any of you. Foster glanced at her watch. Ms. Vale, you are under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy to commit identity theft, aggravated identity theft, and obstruction. You have the right to remain silent. Veronica snapped out of the spell of her own theatrics just in time to look like a person hearing Miranda rights for the first time. An agent moved behind her, hands gentle but final on her wrists. The click of the cuffs landed in my chest like a period at the end of a sentence I'd been scared to write. Mrs. Vale made for her daughter. Another agent lifted a calm hand. Ma'am, please. We'll give you information about the booking location. You can speak to her attorney there. Mom, Veronica said, sudden and soft, face turned over her shoulder. Mom, please. Her mother stopped, torn between 2 griefs, the child she'd loved and the woman in cuffs. She covered her mouth with both hands and nodded once, fast, like a bird trying not to fall. Ethan, Veronica said, next. It was a plea in my direction, but she aimed his name at him. Tell them it's not me. Tell them Trevor. Tell them she... The glare she threw me could have cut skin. She fabricated this. I reached for my phone, thumbed it awake, and flipped the screen to show the timestamp of the audio file glowing red from the second the door had opened. You recorded me, I said. I recorded you. That's the problem with loving documentation. It tends to love you back. Outside, the SUVs idled, exhaust ghosting into the winter air. Agents moved through my house like a small river, carrying devices in labeled bags, reading off numbers, noting locations. It reminded me of triage. Stabilize the scene, protect the patient, document the wounds. They led Veronica out past the tree. She stole one last look at the camera's old square of dust, as if she could will it back to rewrite the angle, fix the lighting, cut the parts where her voice betrayed her. When the door closed on her, the house exhaled. Agent Foster stood with us in the foyer, boot soles leaving faint prints of salt on the mat. Ms. Ellison, Mr. Hayes, thank you for your cooperation, she said. We'll need official statements at the federal building this afternoon. You can follow us in. A victim specialist will meet you there. Mrs. Vale had gone very quiet. Mr. Vale asked for the address with the flattened diction of someone saving his remaining functional pieces for later. Ethan gave it to him gently, wrote it on the back of one of my old grocery lists because it was the first paper that looked like it could carry bad news without breaking. Agent Foster, I said when the house had thinned to 3 agents wrapping cables and a tech photographing my mantle's dust square. The emails about the wrongful death plan, You'll need to testify to your schedule, she said. To any unusual questions Ms. Vale asked you. To their knowledge of your rotations. We'll keep you off the street if needed. Your chief's already been looped in. She tracked Marin's shifts, Ethan said, rage finally warming through his control. She planned to use her work to hurt her. Foster's eyes met his. No flinch. We see it more than you'd think, she said. People weaponize the systems that help them, but she planned it on servers we can read. That's her mistake. I was going to ask if this ends it, I said quietly, but I know better. It ends a chapter, Foster said, and it starts custody for the words she already said on camera. I nodded. Okay. They cleared the last room. Foster handed me a sheet with case numbers, evidence list headers, and a number for the victim liaison. Go breathe somewhere with fresh air, she advised. We'll see you at 2. When the SUVs pulled away, the silence they left was heavier than the noise had been. Mr. and Mrs. Vale stood in the doorway as if forgetting where their bodies belonged. I poured them water because bodies always belong with water. We sat at my table, the one Veronica had tried to turn into a set, and watched the condensation bleed into ringed halos. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it from miles down. I know this isn't the daughter you raised. Mrs. Vale wiped at a tear with a knuckle. She used to collect ladybugs, she said, half smiling and then breaking on it. She would cup them and make wishes. Maybe she still will, Mr. Vale said, not unkindly and not with hope, just with the need to put words in the room. They left for the federal building with directions and a dignity that had to be bone deep to survive this. The door clicked shut. The house felt both too big and not big enough for what had just happened inside it. Ethan turned toward me, his face finally free to show everything he'd been holding still. You okay? I looked at the cold coffee, the scuffed floor, the square of dust where a lens had judged me and found me too stubborn to cut around. Ask me in an hour, I said. He stepped closer, slid his arms around me, and I let the shaking come up from wherever I'd hidden it. He didn't shush me. He didn't fix it. He just stayed. After a while, I pulled back and wiped my face with the heel of my hand. At 2, I said, practical again, because practicality is my religion. We tell the truth, and then we keep telling it. Ethan nodded. We will. On the mantel, the recorder's tiny red eye had finally gone dark. I picked it up, thumbed the file name, and saved it to a folder labeled with today's date. Someday it would be nothing but evidence and an old story. Today it was oxygen. I shut off the tree lights, too cheerful, too much, and grabbed my coat. Outside, the winter light was clean and unflinching. I breathed it until my lungs believed me. Then we locked the door, walked to the car, and drove toward the building where other people would hear what had happened, and write it down until it became part of the world. The federal building downtown was wrapped in glass and quiet authority, the kind of place that looked like it ate secrets for breakfast. Inside, everything hummed: the copy machines, the low murmur of agents, the steady rhythm of paper meeting pen. Agent Foster met us in the lobby. "We'll start with Marin," she said, gesturing toward a long corridor. Ethan gave my hand a squeeze before I followed her into a small interview room. It smelled faintly of coffee and fear, but I'd been in worse rooms. Ambulances, trauma bays, homes where no one called until it was too late. The door shut behind us with a soft click. Foster sat across the table, legal pad open, her gaze steady. "You've already given us partial statements, Beaumoyen," she began, "but I need you to walk me through everything: how you found the evidence, how you confirmed it, and any contact she had with you or Mr. Hayes in the past 3 months." I told her everything: how the fraud trail started as a hunch, then a pattern, then an obsession. How I'd noticed recurring payments linked to Trevor's fake wellness companies, all funneled through accounts under Veronica's initials. How I'd cross-checked the data with a forensic accountant, a man I'd met during a cardiac call who'd once worked white-collar crimes for the Bureau. How we'd built a timeline airtight enough to hold in court. Foster's pen never stopped moving. "You've done half my job," she said quietly. "I just followed the evidence," I said. She glanced up, her expression softening. "Most people don't follow it this far. Most people stop when the truth starts hurting." I thought about Ethan, about the nights he'd fallen asleep on the couch while I combed through spreadsheets at the kitchen table, about the guilt that came with realizing how close Veronica's schemes had come to burying us both. "Sometimes the hurt is the only thing that keeps you awake," I said. When we finished, Foster pushed a cup of water toward me. "You'll likely need to testify," she said. "Not just for the fraud, but for the attempted civil plot, the wrongful death scenario. We've recovered emails that show she and Randall were planning to stage an emergency during one of your night shifts." I nodded. I'd already read the files. They detailed everything down to the ambulance rotation schedule. "She used your work as a weapon," Foster said. "But that's also what's going to convict her. You documented everything, and you never let her pull you out of procedure." That was the part that broke me. The idea that following the rules, the habit of saving strangers, was what had saved me, too. By the time we left the federal building, the sun had slipped behind gray clouds. The city looked metallic, reflective, like someone had drained all the warmth from the light. Ethan wrapped an arm around me as we crossed the parking lot. "What happens now?" he asked. "They'll charge her federally," I said. "Wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, obstruction, maybe more." He exhaled. "And us?" I looked at him, really looked. The exhaustion under his eyes, the quiet fury he'd kept hidden behind calm. "We go home," I said, "and we try to remember what normal feels like." But normal didn't come back. The media found the story within 48 hours. Paramedic exposes ex-girlfriend's multi-million-dollar fraud ring. My name was blurred in some reports, but not all. News vans camped down the street. Reporters waited at intersections pretending to walk dogs that never barked. And then the messages began. The first was a voicemail, a man's voice, low and unhurried. "You should have kept quiet." The second was a photo slid under my door, a blurry zoom of me leaving the hospital parking lot, circled in red. The third was a letter. "People like you disappear all the time." Walsh's detectives and Foster's agents took them seriously. Unmarked cars parked outside. My chief rearranged shifts, so I never worked alone. But fear has long legs. It follows you home, crawls into bed beside you, whispers that safety is a myth you invented to fall asleep. Ethan tried to hold the line for both of us. He cooked dinners, told stupid jokes, talked about road trips we'd never take because we were too busy surviving this one. But I could see the toll in his hands, how they shook when he thought I wasn't looking. 2 weeks later, I was called to a scene at a senior facility. A woman in her 70s, dizzy and disoriented. The apartment was neat, floral curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. She was surrounded by paperwork, trembling as she pointed at the stack. "They emptied my account," she whispered. "Everything's gone." While my partner Danny took her vitals, I glanced through the documents. The names leapt out like déjà vu. Shell companies, duplicate invoices, gym membership records, all with insurance information attached. I felt the chill crawl up my spine. "Ma'am," I asked gently, "did you recently sign up for personal training, maybe at a new gym?" Her eyes brightened in recognition. "Yes. My grandson bought me sessions for my birthday. The trainer was so kind." Asked for my insurance information so the sessions could be covered. Do you remember his name? She frowned. Something like Trevor, but younger. Blonde, handsome. Said he'd worked at another gym before. I stepped into the hallway and called Foster immediately. You've got a new problem, I said. The scam's still active. They're teaching others to run it. She didn't even sound surprised. We suspected as much, she said. Trevor was training new recruits before the raid. We're mapping them now. Send me the address. When the agents arrived 20 minutes later, the woman clutched my hand. Will I get my money back? She asked. I wanted to say yes. I said, we'll do everything we can. But as I watched the agents photograph her papers, I realized something chilling. Veronica and Trevor hadn't just built a scam. They'd built an ecosystem, a blueprint others could keep alive long after they were gone. That night, I sat in the dark living room, watching the reflection of the TV flicker across the window. The news had moved on to weather reports, but I couldn't stop hearing that woman's voice. Everything's gone. Ethan sat beside me, silence stretching between us. Finally, he said, You can't fix all of it. I know, I said, but I can try. He reached over, took my hand. You already did more than anyone should have to. Let the system handle the rest. I turned to him. The system only works when someone forces it to pay attention. He smiled faintly. That's the medic talking. That's the human talking. He leaned in, pressed a kiss to my forehead. Then keep being human. Just don't lose yourself trying to save everyone else. For the first time in months, I laughed. Soft, shaky, but real. That's the job description. He smiled. Maybe, but you're allowed to live too. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. For once, no cars idled at the curb, no shadows lingered too long. The silence felt earned. I didn't know then that this was just the eye of the storm, that the courtroom, the testimony, and the long fight for peace were still ahead. But in that moment, sitting beside Ethan with the hum of the world briefly quiet, I believed maybe, just maybe, the truth had finally found its way home. The courthouse was colder than winter itself, a cathedral of glass and marble built for judgment. When I walked through its doors, I felt small, like the sound of my own steps didn't belong there. But fear is just adrenaline waiting for instructions, and I'd been giving it orders for years. Agent Foster met us by the elevator. Stay calm, speak slow, stick to the truth, she said. Her tone was steady, like a metronome that kept the day from falling apart. Ethan squeezed my hand once before I was escorted into the witness waiting room. Across the hall, Veronica's voice drifted, light, deliberate, rehearsed. Even through the walls, I could tell she was performing. She always had a talent for turning guilt into theater. When they called my name, the doors opened into a flood of light and murmurs. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, victims, strangers, curiosity addicts waiting for a scandal to unfold in real time. Veronica sat at the defense table, hair pinned, navy suit pressed to perfection. Her posture screamed composure, but her eyes betrayed her, restless, darting, defiant. I took the oath, swore to tell the truth, and when I sat, I looked right at her. For the first time, she looked away. The prosecutor began gently. Ms. Ellison, you're a paramedic, correct? Yes. And your connection to the defendant? She was my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend. We'd cross paths occasionally. I didn't know then what she was doing behind the scenes. He nodded, flipping through his notes. Tell us when you first suspected fraud. So I told them. About the gym accounts, the shell companies, the night I found a receipt in Ethan's old mailbox for a credit card he'd never owned. About how one name, Veronica Vale, kept showing up in places it shouldn't. The jury leaned in. Even the judge seemed to still. It wasn't a story of betrayal anymore. It was anatomy, a dissection of deceit. I explained the financial trail, the timestamps, the withdrawals. When the prosecutor asked about the wrongful death plan, my voice faltered for the first time. They wanted to use my work, I said. My career. They planned to fake a negligence incident during one of my emergency calls. It would look like my fault. They'd sue the city, collect millions, and I'd lose everything. The defense attorney stood, pacing with practiced irritation. Isn't it true, Ms. Ellison, that you and my client had personal disagreements prior to this alleged fraud? She tried to destroy my reputation, I said. I disagreed with that, yes. The courtroom chuckled lightly. Even the judge hid a smirk. The defense attorney sighed. You expect us to believe this was all one woman's doing? That she masterminded an entire fraud ring? No, I said simply. She didn't mastermind it. She scaled it. She made it bigger, better, crueler. The prosecutor smiled faintly. No further questions. For 3 days, Veronica sat under those same lights, giving her version of the truth. Her lawyer painted her as a victim of manipulation. A lonely woman seduced into criminality by a dangerous man. Her voice trembled on cue. She dabbed her eyes with tissues that never got wet. But the evidence shredded the performance. Emails where she bragged about stupid clients. Voice messages where she joked about old people handing over their lives like donations. Bank transfers signed in her hand. And then the ledger, 63 victims. Names, addresses, totals. She'd kept score like it was a game. When the verdict came, the room held its breath. Guilty on all counts. Wire fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, obstruction. The foreman's voice was calm, final. Veronica stared straight ahead. No tears, no collapse, just that same unblinking stare, as if she could rewrite reality if she didn't look away. Trevor got 25 years. The trainees 5 to 15. Veronica got 12. The judge called her cold, methodical, and unrepentant. He said her intelligence had been her weapon. Her victims would carry her signature in their credit scores for the rest of their lives. Afterward, I stood in the hallway with Foster. "It's done," I said, though my voice didn't sound convinced. "It started," she corrected. "Justice doesn't end at sentencing. It's a long road of making peace with what's left." Outside, reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Ethan guided me past them, a steady hand on my back. At home that night, I found the back door open again. Nothing missing, nothing broken, just the wind moving the curtain like someone breathing too close. When I called the police, they found no fingerprints. "Probably just wind," one officer said kindly. But when I looked closer, I saw it, a smudge on the doorknob shaped like a fingerprint wiped away. Fear crawled back in, quiet but familiar, a reminder that even when the monster's gone, her shadow lingers. 3 months later, I got a call from Foster. Her tone was different, lighter, almost relieved. "Marin," she said, "I thought you'd want to know. Randall's dead. Prison fight. The man who ran him inside turned on him. Vega's network, what's left of it, is collapsing." I closed my eyes. "And Veronica?" "She's fine. Still in federal custody. Her deal didn't save her. She's not going anywhere." It should have felt like closure. Instead, it felt like the end of a storm and the start of the silence after. The part where you look around and see what's still standing. Ethan found me on the porch that night, coffee gone cold in my hands. "He's dead," I said. "It's over." He sat beside me, arms folded. "Then what now?" "Now," I said, "we build something that isn't about survival." He nodded. "Together." And for the first time in years, I believed that was possible. A month later, I accepted a speaking invitation from a nonprofit that helped victims of financial crime. I told my story, not the scandal, not the drama, but the part that mattered. How truth costs, how survival is messy, how healing doesn't mean forgetting. Afterward, a woman in the audience hugged me with trembling hands. "I lost everything to someone like her," she whispered. "But you made me believe I can start again." Her words stayed with me for weeks, because maybe that was the point. Maybe it wasn't about destroying Veronica. Maybe it was about proving she hadn't destroyed me. 2 years later, the world had gone quiet again. Not perfectly still, but peacefully so. I'd sold the old house, the one with its ghosts and broken locks, and moved into a small place across town. A garden, wide windows, enough sunlight to remind me that the world could still be gentle. Ethan and I married in spring. No audience, no photographers, no spectacle. Just us, the judge, 2 signatures, and the sound of rain tapping against courthouse glass. When he slid the ring on my finger, his hands were steady, his eyes soft in the way only time and truth can teach a person to be. We didn't talk about Veronica that day. We didn't have to. A year later, my story found its way back into the light. A documentary filmmaker reached out, someone doing a series about financial crimes and survivor advocacy. I refused at first. I'd spent too long learning how to live without headlines. But when she said, "We'll focus on the victims, not you," something in me shifted. I told her I'd do it, on one condition: no dramatization, just truth. The interview lasted 6 hours. They asked about the case, the investigation, the trial, the aftermath. But what the cameras couldn't capture was how silence had become my greatest ally, the way peace felt louder than justice. When the documentary aired 8 months later, Veronica appeared on screen from prison, clean, composed, rehearsed. She talked about manipulation, about remorse, about how she was trying to rebuild her sense of self. I didn't believe her, but I didn't hate her anymore either. Because hate is a chain, and I'd cut mine off long ago. Then came the letters, hundreds of them. People who'd been defrauded, scammed, abandoned, who'd watched their lives collapse under other people's greed. One wrote, "I was about to sign a contract with a personal trainer. Something felt off. Then I saw your documentary. I walked away. They were arrested 2 months later." Another said, "You reminded me it's not weakness to be fooled, it's humanity." I cried over every letter, because for the first time I realized something simple. Survival is contagious. The years stretched forward, quiet but full. Ethan and I built a life in small, steady pieces. I got promoted to shift supervisor, the youngest in our district. He opened his own clinic, specializing in trauma recovery. We filled our evenings with things that didn't cost money. Books, walks, late-night cooking experiments that sometimes ended in laughter, sometimes in takeout. I'd wake up some mornings and forget the name Veronica Vale even existed. Other days, I'd remember everything at once. Her smirk, her arrogance, her downfall, and feel nothing at all. That's how healing sneaks up on you. One day, you stop flinching at the memory. 7 years after the arrest, Agent Foster called again. Her voice was older now, roughened by too many cases. "Veronica's up for parole next month," she said. "The board is allowing victim impact statements. Do you want to appear?" "No," I said immediately. "You're sure? It could help keep her inside." I looked across the living room where Ethan sat reading on the couch, a soft light on his face. "I'm sure," I said. "She's already behind the only bars that matter, the ones she built herself." Foster was quiet for a beat. "For what it's worth," she said, "I think you're right. Her record inside isn't good. She won't get out this time." And she didn't. Her parole was denied. I learned later from court summaries that she'd refused rehabilitation programs, argued with staff, and claimed victimhood until the very end. Some people don't evolve. They just grow older inside the same cage. 10 years passed from the day of her arrest. The world moved on, and so did I. We bought a bigger house near the coast, not for luxury, but for space to breathe. I taught first aid courses at the community center. Ethan volunteered at shelters. We planted trees that grew faster than our worries. And then, one Christmas morning, I woke to the soft sound of our baby crying. Her name was Clara, a miracle wrapped in pink fleece and warm milk and everything pure the world could still offer. I lifted her from her crib, felt her tiny heartbeat against my chest. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," I whispered. Ethan came in behind me, kissed my temple, looked at her like she'd hung the stars herself. We stood there, 3 people in a room filled with the glow of morning light. And I realized something. The story hadn't ended when Veronica went to prison. It had ended here, in this quiet room, in the life she never got to destroy. Because that's what survival really means. You stop measuring justice in sentences served and start measuring it in joy reclaimed. Later that day, as snow began to fall outside, I stood by the window holding Clara while Ethan brewed coffee. 10 years ago, he said softly, Veronica tried to ruin Christmas. I smiled. And now? He smiled back. Now it's perfect. I looked down at our daughter, her small fingers curling around mine. This, I said, was the gift all along. Not revenge, not vindication, just peace. I watched the snow settle over the garden, soft and clean, burying every trace of what used to be. And in that stillness, I finally understood. Some stories don't end with a bang. They end quietly, with love, with forgiveness, with a baby's laughter filling the house that darkness once tried to claim. And that's more than survival. That's freedom.